Friends, over the past year, you and I have driven a lot of the 2015 Hyundai Sonata. Hell, the first one we drove had an early version of Apple CarPlay, and the last one we drove was the first ever car on public roads with Android Auto. Well, for 2016, Hyundai, they have a couple more tricks up their sleeve.
You can switch between HEV and EV, so you can literally turn off most of the electrification to store your electric energy for uses, say, driving around in city centers. So as especially now as we're leaving the city center, I can switch over to eco mode, hybrid mode, and use the gas engine.
Okay, being we already brought it up, let's go for a deep dive on the gasoline engine. Now, whether you choose the hybrid or the plug-in hybrid, you get any engine you want as long as it's a direct-injected 2-liter 4-cylinder that puts out 154 horsepower at a very aggressive 6,000 RPM and 140 pound-feet of torque at an also aggressive 4,000 RPM. Now, the differences between the two, they come in at the starter generator motor. On the hybrid side, it adds an additional 38 kilowatts or 51 horsepower. On the plug-in side, it adds an additional 50 kilowatts or 67 horsepower. Now that brings us to the total system output. On the hybrid side, 193 horsepower. On the plug-in side, 202 horsepower. Being the majority of that power is derived from the gasoline side of things, both of those figures come in at a very high 6,000 RPM.
Admittedly, that's not a hell of a lot of power, but how does that translate out here on the road when you're dealing in traffic like this? I've driven this car from now, Huntington Beach to San Diego and back, both the plug-in as well as the hybrid, and there's never an instance where you feel this thing is underpowered. I mean, it is definitely not a Ferrari California T, that I will tell you. But it's not underpowered at all. The power delivery is a little bit lazy because the peak power on either configuration comes in at 6,000 RPM. But if I were put my product guy hat on, what I'd love to see here is, the Eco we drove? The 1.6 turbo engine with the DCT transmission. I think that coupled with this whole plug-in hybrid thing, that thing would be awesome to be able to switch on and off the electric, but still have that turbo engine with that crisp shifting transmission. That would be the ideal change here.
Now, it doesn't exactly scream Prius, so besides strapping an electric motor and a couple of batteries to this thing, what are some of the differences? Well, the front grille, the headlights, the rocker panels, the alloy wheels, there are opening flaps behind the grille, the bumper curtains are lower, and the underbody has been modified to improve aerodynamics. That translates to a coefficient of drag of 0.27 on the hybrid and 0.24 on the plug-in hybrid. As a basis of comparison, the aforementioned Prius, 0.25, and Ford's very fancy but incredibly expensive Fusion Energy Hybrid, 0.27. Now, there's one other change, and that is the construction. They use different types of steel here to lower the weight, and this is all fine and good, but how does it translate to out on the road?
So, driving dynamics. I always think this is somewhat humorous to discuss when we're dealing with hybrids, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with a car that has two propulsion systems, which inherently makes it heavier. So we've covered driving dynamics when it comes to Hyundai Sonatas now twice. So go back and look at the original 2015 Sonata episode and our Sonata Eco episode. But here, as it relates to driving dynamics, we need to focus on the transmission. Hyundai has taken the very smart decision to give us a real geared transmission instead of a CVT like everybody else does. So I think the Volkswagen is the only other one that does a geared transmission with their hybrid. And really think about this for a minute. It transforms the driving dynamics because you're already driving a car that's different than a normal car that you're used to because it has two different propulsion systems. But then most manufacturers throw in this rubber band of a transmission, CVT, and it just makes you feel disconnected from the car. By putting in a stepped geared transmission, in this case 6 speeds, you have a car that, yes, is odd in the way it delivers power, but it drives the way you're used to.
Okay, so all of you watching this are well aware no one buys these cars for style or driving dynamics, so let's get to the figures that matter. On the hybrid side of things, 40 in the city, 44 on the highway, and 42 combined. On the plug-in side of things, the combined is 40, But really what we're interested here is the MPGe, and that is 93. Now, as interesting as these numbers are, what's more interesting is how Hyundai relates this information to you and how you can manipulate it on the road.
You're probably wondering why I have the navigation on, because usually I don't leave navigation on when I'm driving with you guys. There is a coast guide in this car, and if you really think about a hybrid, one of the benefits of a hybrid, actually, not just a hybrid, the Porsche Boxster with the PDK does this, they can coast. So the idea is to disengage the engine, and you're not running the engine when you're going downhill like this. So when you're in the navigation mode, the car, it's like a rudimentary system that reads the road, or really from the GIS data and the maps, where you are, and it kind of suggests whether you should coast or not. So here we're coming to a stop at Bluebird Canyon Road. But there is one other change here that they don't really tell you about too much, and this is a change that's shared. Remember that Kia EV, the Soul EV we drove? This, I gotta say, this is a neat little feature, and that is driver-only HVAC system. So think about it. How many times you're in a car like this by yourself, you're stuck in traffic, and you want to try to minimize the impact, the global impact of this car? Well, one way to do it is to basically shut off the HVAC system to the rest of the car, and you can do that with this button here.
So over the past 6 years, I've shared with you guys many times that I am a frustrated designer. So when I come across a unique design trick, I get very excited. And here, it's the hybrid, not the one that plugs into the wall, that is the more interesting of the two. So think about any one of these types of cars. The OEMs, they put batteries in very unfortunate places, like between the trunk and the rear seat. So if you have kids, or you're just trying to cart stuff around and you don't want an SUV or a minivan, you can't put the seats down. So Hyundai instead took the battery on the hybrid and put it in the spare tire well.
Now there are a couple of other various and sundry bits we need to cover here. The range. In the plug-in hybrid, how far can you go on EV mode? Well, that's 24 miles. And then while we're talking about EV mode, obviously there's a battery back there. And the first thing everyone asks me about these things is, well, what's the warranty? How much does it cost to replace? All this kind of stuff. Everybody's worried about range and batteries. Well, funny thing here, or not really funny thing, an interesting thing here, the battery for the first owner is lifetime. So let's say you own this thing 20 years, 20-year warranty on the battery. And then last but not least is, where can you actually buy one of these things? At least the plug-in hybrid. So the hybrid is going to be available pretty much anywhere. But when these things come out in the fall, so the hybrid comes out first, and that's over the summer, and then there's the plug-in hybrid, which is going to come out in the fall, and that one is only going to be available basically any state you want, as long as it's California and Oregon. And then after that, it's going to cascade into the 10 zero-emission states. Now, interesting thing, we were chatting with some of the Hyundai folks, and Hyundai realizes there are going to be some tree huggers that want a green Hyundai in other states. Well, once they get through the rollout in the 10 EV zero-emitting states, you will actually be able to special order one of these things. I don't know of any other car manufacturer that has thought to do this special order on like a mass market D-segment car with a hybrid system.
And with that, this is the portion of our episode where I normally say, so in summary, what do we got? However, today I don't feel comfortable going in that direction because during our time with Hyundai, we were given incredibly limited access to this car. So perhaps in the future we may come back, spend some more time behind the wheel, and share some thoughts with you. But in the interim, I want to leave you guys with a question, and this one's an industry question. It's very possible for one to go out and choose between many different D-segment cars, which this is, that return 30 MPGe all day long. Or one could go out and get a car like this that does 40 to 50 MPGe. However, there's a penalty of $4,000 to $7,000 difference on the front end. So my question to you is this: given the choice between the two, which would you choose? Why would you choose it? And what region of the world do you live in? And for good measure, throw in if you have a family and how many kids you actually have. Let me know in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And until next time, a bit of a cliffhanger. The car we're driving in the next full episode, I already mentioned in this one.